so much, Ryan. 20 years ago, I wrote an article about the naming of Alex Lowe Peak in Montana Quarterly, and I have several copies with me if you are interested in this. Also, a couple of thank yous. One of the blessings of being involved with this project is getting to get to know Alex's family. Especially Jenny Lowe, who helped me tremendously with this presentation, was in the audience last night and provided me with lots of photos for this presentation, and just incredibly indebted to Jenny Lowe. Also providing photos are Max Lowe, Joe Josephson, Chris Nauman, David Thompson, and Doug Chabot. So grateful for them. Okay, let's go. When I moved to Bozeman in January 1999, arguably the town's most famous resident was Alex Lowe, named by Outside Magazine as the world's greatest climber, crushing first ascents that no one thought possible. In a town renowned for outdoor recreation, Alex epitomized our collective thirst for adventure. But in October of that same year, Alex's life was cut tragically short in an avalanche on Shishapangma in Tibet. I attended his public memorial service, heartbroken for his family and sad that I never had an opportunity to meet the man who famously said, "The greatest climber in the world is the one having the most fun." Years later, writing an article about local unnamed mountains, I learned that there was specific naming criteria, including that any honoree should have a specific connection with the peak being named. I wondered if there was an unnamed peak close to Bozeman that Alex had a solid association with. Subsequently, I came across a reference to a ski mountaineering descent that Alex Lowe and Hans Sari had made of a feature that they named Hellmouth Couloir on an unnamed peak just southwest of Mount Blackmore, known as Peak 10,031, after its altitude. Had I stumbled upon a connection between Alex and an unnamed peak? I met with Jackie Riley, the local geographic naming coordinator for the Forest Service, to verify the process required for having a peak named. When I told her the story of Alex and Hellmouth Couloir, she said, "That sends chills up my spine. You absolutely have to do this." But who was I? I needed to broach this with Alex's family. I nervously met with artist Jenny Lowe and explained the naming process and the connection I had uncovered with the peak. She said that Alex would have been embarrassed by such an honor, but the family would appreciate it if I spearheaded the naming effort so she and her children could have a reminder of Alex on the local skyline. In order to create a compelling application to have Peak 1031 named in honor of Alex, I needed to research and document Alex's descent of Hellmouth Couloir, profile his climbing accomplishments, and I needed to show local support for the application. But I also wanted to learn more about Alex as a person by talking to those closest to him. In the application, I chronicled Alex's climbing resume, from Mount Everest to Great Trango Tower to Alaska's Mount Huntington, to Great Sail Peak in the Baffin Islands, to first ascents in Antarctica and the Canadian Rockies. Alex pushed the limits of what was possible in the alpine environment with grace and speed. He also pioneered new climbing routes in our own backyard. He started a climbing log that was kept at Barrel Mountaineering on Main Street, providing detailed instructions for others to follow if they dared on objectives like the Matriarch and Winter Dance. Alex beckoned others into the wild places close to home. I reached out to Christopher Erickson, a friend of Alex's and Hans Sari's, to see what I could learn about this descent of Hellmouth Couloir. Chris's notes indicated that in the spring of 1996, Alex and Hans were skiing couloirs on Elephant Mountain when they spied a north-facing gash on Peak 1031, so they decided to go for it. Now about Alex. His climbing companions told me that he had an infectious joy for spending time with friends in the outdoors. He rose early, rallying friends to join him on dawn patrol, fueled by coffee and adrenaline. They reported that there was climbing, and then there was climbing with Alex, which was much more challenging and much more fun. He loved his family, Jenny, Max, Sam, and Isaac, and constantly struggled with the dichotomy of pursuing challenging adventures in far-flung places and a deep yearning to be with his young family. An Outside Magazine article, "The Boy Scout and the Mutant Do Battle at 20,000 Feet," chronicled his personal tug-of-war. In October 2004, I submitted a 90-page application to the U.S. Board of Geographic Names, including letters of support from the City of Bozeman, Gallatin County, Sierra Club, and the local Forest Service. A year-long process of meetings and follow-up questions ensued. I just hoped that I had done enough. But one thing kept on nagging at me. I had always assumed that Hellmouth Couloir was a Y-shaped feature on the west side of the peak, on your left, but that line wasn't visible from Elephant Mountain. Was it possible that Alex and Hans had found a way to ski the near vertical shaft featuring a prominent chalkstone halfway down? I couldn't imagine. I circled back with Chris Erickson, and he recalled that Hans said most people wouldn't consider Hellmouth Couloir to be a skiable feature. Clearly, the shaft with the prominent chalkstone fit that bill. I asked Jenny Lowe to check Alex's ski mountaineering photos to see if any of those photos showed a gigantic chalkstone. After an extensive search, Jenny hit pay dirt. On the left, Alex Lowe's ice axis appears in the foreground as Hans summits 1031. On the right, Hans is looking into the mouth created by a huge chalkstone that I subsequently learned is only accessible after 2 cliff rappels. Bingo, Hellmouth Couloir. As the application proceeded, I decided to climb the peak with my friend and artist, Aaron Schur. The route traverses a spectacular basin, and there are faint goat paths that lead to the summit. True to Alex's memory, it was a grand adventure shared by friends. Aaron's painting of Alex Lowe Peak is on the screen. Finally, in September 2005, almost a year after the original submission, I received notice from the U.S. Board of Geographic Names that Peak 1031 was now officially Alex Lowe Peak in honor of one of Bozeman's favorite sons. I shared the news with Jenny. Alex Lowe was officially on the map. The following spring, Alex's extended family, including his father, brothers, and niece, summited Alex Lowe Peak supported by a pack goat. Alex's mother was introduced to the peak from a small plane circling above. I'd hoped all along that this tangible remembrance of Alex could provide comfort for Alex's family and inspiration for others. But the story of Alex Lowe Peak had one more chapter. In 2022, after Alex's body emerged from a melting Himalayan glacier, the family traveled to Tibet to perform a funeral ceremony. They returned to Bozeman with Alex's ashes, which they released from Alex Lowe Peak to sail in the wind among the wild places that Alex loved. If you like challenging adventures in wild places, take the 15-mile round trip to the summit of Alex Lowe Peak, where you'll be reminded that good friends enjoying nature's beauty is the spice of life. Thank you.